Okay, so we got everybody? I believe so. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation of inherited property, clearing title, deferred property taxes, and other probate concerns. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the A Month of Service collaboration. Also included, we have the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods. Also, on behalf of our presenting partners, we have Ms. Mabel Menifee with the Harris Central Appraisal District. We have Ms. Shay Pinkowski, who's joining us with the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and Ms. Lisa Nelson with the Texas Legal Services Center, who will all be facilitating and providing the information for you today about inherited property. But also included in our partnership, we also have the Earl Carl Institute, Lone Star Legal Aid, and Houston Volunteer Lawyers. And together we all make up a month of service. And basically, a month of service is the collaboration of all of our organizations coming together on a monthly basis and offering a variety of different workshops, resources, and information to the communities that we all serve that are relative to asset protection, asset building, the maintaining of generational wealth, and community empowerment. We know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there, folks that don't know where to go for a lot of information, that don't know where to go for particular resources and services. So we decided several years ago to come together in a collective effort to try to create a larger impact, to try to reach more people, and to try to get as much information out to the community, to get as much information as we possibly can out to the community. And I was gonna say something along the lines that there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. So we want to try to get people the most up to date, the most accurate information from the professionals in those areas of expertise that are relative to our communities, to relative to the state of Texas, to Harris County, and so forth. There's a lot of information that's out there that's kind of like all over social media and people telling you this and that, that has absolutely nothing to do with the state of Texas or nothing to do with the laws for the state of Texas. So a lot of that information does not apply here. So we want to make sure that you guys get the most accurate information as you possibly can. Policies and procedures change, laws change on a regular basis, and we want to make sure that those experts in those fields are giving you guys and giving the community members the right information that they need to make informed decisions, that's going to help, again, with protecting their generational wealth and help empowering them to, make whatever choices and decisions that they need to make. So we used to do these resources and workshops in person, but of course we had to adapt to the virtual platform, and this has allowed us the opportunity to, in fact, reach more people, not only in throughout the city of Houston and Harris County, but also surrounding counties and the entire state. So regardless of where you're joining us from, in the state of Texas here today, do know that the information is relative to you as well, and it's not just for the city of Houston or for Harris County. Also note that the information that we do provide on this presentation, along with all of our other workshops, is for educational purposes only. It is not to be considered legal advice. However, we do encourage you to reach out to our legal service partners, to any of our presenters, um, to apply for their services. Don't automatically discount yourself and automatically assume that you will not qualify, because you'll be surprised as to how many people actually qualify for free legal services throughout the state. We do want to make sure that your individual questions or issues are addressed. So the presenters will be providing you with some contact information of who you can contact as well about your specific question. We do ask that the participants, as you're asking questions today, to try to keep your questions to be as general as you possibly can. One, we want to try to protect your privacy as best we can as well, because we are on a public platform. We are broadcasting live on our social media channels, as well as recording this session. So we don't want your personal detail information getting out there. Don't give us your name, your addresses, your mom that passed, or your dad that lives in whatever street. Don't divulge any of that information for everybody to have access to. So do keep that in mind. You do have the opportunity to type your question into the chat. There are some representatives here that will be monitoring the chat and answering questions there. But we will also be reading aloud at the end some of the questions. Because we are also, again, like I said before, on our social media channels, those folks don't see the chat. So sometimes your question may be the same question that somebody else is asking. So even though it may be answered in the chat, some of those questions I will go back and read aloud so that everybody can actually hear. And then a lot of times too, as you're watching the presentation, you may not be paying attention to what's going on in the chat anyway either. So we want to make sure, again, those questions actually get addressed so that everybody can see, what's being answered and kind of what's being discussed. Um, with the recording, with this session being recorded, the chat will also be included. So if there are questions that are being answered in the chat, you'll have the opportunity to go back and watch and see the chat and see the information that's being placed in the chat as well, if you want to go back and review that. So the resources that are referred to throughout this presentation this afternoon, I will be emailing that information out to all of you guys as well, along with the calendar of our other upcoming events, and other resources that that we may come across or what have you that may be of interest to you. So you do have the opportunity to go back and watch the presentation again. We do ask that you pay it forward and share it with as many people that that may find the information to be beneficial. Last week was our kind of like our first part, our wills and estate planning session, and why do you need it? So that's kind of like what happens before. How do you prepare before someone actually passes? In this segment, we are here to focus on what happens after someone passes. What happens? What is probate? What's the probate process like? What if someone passed without a will? If they had a will, if you've got multiple heirs, and how do you resolve those kinds of conflicts? What happens? What if you've got an heir that actually still lives in the property and there's available exemptions? So that's kind of why we have the tax office as well as the appraisal district included in this particular session about inherited property, because those other issues do arise after someone actually passes away. So, and Miss Mabel is going to get into the details about how the heirship exemption kind of come into place, but there were some changes that came about a while back about the heirship exemption. So she's going to go into that. But because that was also an issue, we wanted to make sure that the tax office and the appraisal district was included so that they can explain that information and what happens after your loved one passes away. When you got multiple heirs and there's one that's still living in the property, how do they still take advantage of those exemptions? And then if someone passed with deferred property taxes, or didn't pay their tax bill, what obligation or liability does that put on the family? How does that actually work? So we're going to get into all of that. So I know that there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of information that's going to be covered here today. So we do this session the second Thursday of each month. So if you forget or think that there's something else that you didn't remember, you always have the opportunity to come back and join us the following month as well to answer your question again, or to get some other things addressed, or want to invite somebody to sit around the computer and watch it all together. This will be the opportunity to bring those other family members in to say, hey, y'all really need to hear this. This is some great information that we all need to talk about, because we know a lot of families that don't like to talk about somebody's passing and somebody's demise as if they're going to be exempt, like it's not going to happen to them, but it happens to everybody. You just don't know when. So we want to make sure that everybody's kind of aware. So that's an opportunity for you to have this discussion with some of those family members. But like I said, it's a lot of information that's going to be covered. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to do some brief introductions of our presenters. Shay and Miss Mabel will have you guys go first, and then Miss Lisa will have you introduce, and then you can move on into your presentation. So Shay.
All righty. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shay Pinkowski, and I'm from the Office of Annette Ramirez with the Harris County Tax Office. We're super excited to get to share some information with you today and help you understand how the tax collecting process works, how we determine how much you owe on your bills, along with what we can do to assist you in making sure that those bills remain paid and not be placed into delinquency. But we're really excited to share some information with you today. I look forward to it. Please feel free to put any questions you have for me in the chat. And as Nia mentioned earlier, just whenever you're giving information or you're asking your questions, please make sure that you keep it as vague as possible. If you can keep it just to the situation and not to your personal information, that's always best. I will have contact information up at the end, so if you need to reach out to us directly, you can do so, and then we can speak a little bit more about your specific situation. But super excited to speak with everyone here today. I'm going to pass it over to Miss Mabel.
Thanks, Shay. Good afternoon, everyone. And echoing what my colleagues have said, thank you very much for joining us. There's information that regarding uh, property taxes and exemptions that play a role in terms of clearing title on inherited property. And there's some things that we really want to make sure that you understand so that you're not having a time lag in terms of what needs to be done, particularly when it comes to exemptions. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, where we're going to go into that, as well as just kind of an overall view of the appraisal district and what we do and why exemptions are so important in protecting you from paying more taxes than you need to. So thanks very much. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa now, who's going to get us started, and I will see you right after she finishes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really happy to be here with my colleagues. We do this every month, but we take July off, so it's nice to be back and starting our next season. My name is Lisa Nelson, and I am a staff attorney at Texas Legal Services Center. I'm going to go ahead and start my slide as I go into my introduction.
And just a reminder, feel free to type your question into the chat.
Yes, please do. I've been doing this for so many years, and there's always some kind of slowdown. I will be monitoring the chat when my colleagues are speaking, and I'll answer questions directly in the chat. I want to repeat what Shay said. Please do not give your private information at all. We don't want your business out there on the internet. This is on YouTube as well, so it's better to keep that private. It's easy enough to make it general, and if you're worried about that, you're welcome to reach out to me privately on the chat, and I'll share my contact information as well. So I'm here to talk about clearing title and other probate concerns. This is, as Ms. Nia said, kind of the finale of the month in terms of all the different probate and estate planning presentations we do. My focus is on how to handle your inherited property, but I'm also going to talk to you about probate basics in general. What happens now that you have all your documents in place, what to do when your loved one has passed away, and also how to eliminate any type of inheritance headaches for your loved ones in the future. So we will start with an overview of the probate process, and then I'll go into the what you're all here for today, which is how to clear title to inherited property. That's also called heirship property, family homes, and what to do to make sure that the transfer process goes straight forward in the future. And then I'll pass it over to my colleagues at HCAT and the Tax Assessor Collector's Office to talk about property tax issues. I'm with Texas Legal Services Center, which has been around since 1981. I am here in Houston, but it's a statewide organization. The home office is in Austin, and we provide legal advice, advocacy, representation, and education to underserved people across the state. We have more than a dozen practice areas, multiple practice areas for crime victims, family law issues, veterans, people over the age of 60. And our work touches almost every aspect of civil law that affects low-income Texans, but really Texans in general. Our mission is to ensure equal justice for all Texans by educating, empowering, and representing vulnerable people while reshaping the greater legal system that impacts us all. Again, I'm Lisa Nelson. I'm a staff attorney. I'm on the Texas Law Help team. Texas Law Help is a website that is like an encyclopedia about legal issues. We're geared towards non-lawyers, though I have found out that a lot of attorneys and judges use our website as well. We have articles about pretty much anything legal that's not criminal that you might have questions about, as well as a lot of forms for things that you can handle on your own without an attorney. And I will also put my email address and our website in the chat when I'm finished. So I like to start out by talking about probate concerns. So we go from the general to the specific. There are a lot of new vocabulary words that you need to learn when you're dealing with this issue. So a decedent is a person who passed away. Testate is a person who died with a will, and it's intestate if there was no will or the will was not legally valid. A testator is the person who signs a will, as well as a person who has a will in place at the time that they pass. And a will is a legal document that states how the testator's property is to be distributed at death. Estate is your stuff. It's on both your real property, which is another word for real estate, and your personal property owned by the person who passed at the time of death. Probate is the process of winding up a person's affairs. When anyone passes, that if it needs to go through the court system, that goes through the probate courts. However, if a person dies without a will, it's called administration. I try to stick with the term personal representative, which is a good generic term. If someone passes with a will, the person who is in charge of wrapping up the affairs is called the executor. If they passed without a will, it's the administrator. Heir and beneficiary is any person who inherits through will or by law. And I'll explain this a little more in a minute. I have these common mistakes, and every month I think, oh, everybody knows this. I don't need to go through this again. And sure enough, the next event that I do, somebody comes up and asks me the same question. Powers of attorney are only valid while someone is living. Once they've passed away, that power of attorney is void. I had a client in the past who thought that she was able to handle the funeral process because she was her mother's power of attorney, and that's absolutely not true. The power of attorney only is valid while someone is alive. People think that Texas is a community property state, so it doesn't matter if we have wills. You know, what my spouse has is what I have is mine. That's absolutely not true. There's the concept of separate and community property, and a surviving spouse has a life estate in the deceased person's home, even if it is separate property. Separate property would be if you married someone who owned a home before the two of you were married and you reside in that home. That house is not necessarily community property. It may still be separate property. Now, the surviving spouse can live in that home until they die. They do have to pay property taxes and make sure the property is maintained, but they do have the right to remain in the house until they pass away. Also, when you are selecting an executor for your estate, the person must be over the age of 18, and it is much better if they live in Texas. There are ways to make it work if they don't live in Texas, but it is much better if they live within the state. Texas law makes it pretty easy for a will to be accepted by a judge, but there still is a concern about the will being valid. The top concern is that your executor needs to find your original will. If they can only find a copy, the law is that the will was probably revoked. There are ways to get around it, but it makes things more difficult. So have your will in a safe place, but also let your executor or a loved one know where that original will is. You can do your own will, but I'm always going to recommend that you have an attorney prepare that will for you. The reason is if everybody gets along and there aren't any problems, there most likely will not be issues. But if there's that one family member that isn't going to cooperate, if you did the will yourself, there's a chance that the judge will not find it valid, and it will be a lot more complicated. That's why I don't recommend forms that you get from websites such as LegalZoom. Our website, texaslawhelp.org, does have forms that the Texas Supreme Court has approved. So those should work with the court. I'm still always going to encourage you to use an attorney. And Amos has amazing partners that do will clinics fairly often throughout the year. So please pay attention and use our resources. It is also important that spouses have separate wills. They cannot have one will that they both sign. Texas law still allows you to write your own wills in your handwriting. It cannot be typed, cannot be a fill in the blank form. It has to be completely in your own handwriting. It's called a holographic will, and we have information about it on our website. And like I said before, make sure that you keep your will in a safe place that at least some of your loved ones know about it. One thing we have to think about, because it floods, there are people that may have a safe in their home and they keep all their important documents there. I've heard more than once where that safe gets picked up by floodwaters and gets washed away. So make sure it's in a safe place that is also a stable place. It's really critical to remember, if you die without a legally valid will, the law determines who will inherit your property. And there's a very complicated chart that explains how things are passed if someone did not have a will, but it's not who you liked. I mean, you can tell somebody all day long who you want to inherit your property, but if you don't have a will that is found to be legally valid by a judge, that doesn't matter. Your wishes will not matter. There are procedures if you cannot find a will. It's called an application for administration. If the judge determines that you can use an independent administration, it is similar to someone who passes away with a valid will. There are other circumstances. If somebody in the family is going to fight, if one of your heirs is under the age of 18, you will have to have a dependent administration, which is much more expensive. There are extremely limited situations where you can file a small estate affidavit. In Texas, you are required to have an attorney to probate. I know it's frustrating, it's more expensive, but the issue is probate is a lot more complicated than people think. An attorney will know the best way to proceed if the person did not have a will. I can't tell you how many times people have tried to go through the probate process, tried to resolve everything on their own, and it ends up costing them more money because they don't use the legally proper ways. In Texas, we have both probate and non-probate assets. Probate assets are property that is in your name that passes through a will. That could be real estate, and that's also personal property, anything in your home, your furniture, your car, all of those things. Non-probate assets pass according to a contract. They do not go through probate court. They do not have, your will has nothing to do with it. Non-probate assets pass in accordance with the beneficiaries. So for example, you name a beneficiary to your life insurance, any retirement or other investment plans, or payable on death account. A great secret in Texas is you always want to have a will because there's always going to be something you may have forgotten about. But if you have payable on death beneficiaries on all your financial accounts and transfer on death deed for your house, your family may not need to probate your will, and they will be able to settle your affairs much more quickly and much less expensively. So I always tell people this afternoon or in the morning, sit down with a list of your assets. Call your bankers, call your credit union, call the people who handle your insurance, and make sure you have payable on death beneficiaries on all those accounts. Make sure the name of those beneficiaries is exactly the same as the name on their driver's license or whatever their state ID is. Make sure you have a transfer on death deed for your house. It will make life so much easier for your loved ones. Small estate affidavits can be very confusing. They only work in extremely limited circumstances. You can only use a small estate affidavit to transfer a home or any other real estate if it goes to a surviving spouse or a child under the age of 18. If it is an adult child who lived in the home, an adult child who was a caregiver, they cannot use a small estate affidavit to transfer the home to themselves or to any other family member. Also, with small estate affidavits, everybody has to agree. everybody has to sign that affidavit along with two witnesses who knew the family history of the person who passed. You cannot use a small estate affidavit if there was a will, and the value of the assets has to be greater than the debts. So for example, if someone passes away and they had $50,000 in cars and other property, but they had $70,000 in debts, the judge will not approve the small estate affidavit. Your home is not included in the value of the estate. Everything else must be valued at less than $75,000. Okay, so if you are going to probate a will, or if the attorney determines that independent administration will work in your circumstances, how the process begins is that the attorney files an application with the court. After 10 days, the application for probate has to be on file for 10 days before the attorney can set a hearing. This does not mean that you will go to court on the 11th or 12th day. In Harris County, you're looking at least 6 months. It's probably more. I have not been in court in some time. However, the court process itself is quite simple. So if the judge normally grants an application for probate or application for administration, and the personal representative receives letters. If there was a will, it's called letters testamentary. If there was no will, it's letters of administration. That is the official permission, the official endorsement from the judge that that person has the authority to handle the deceased person's affairs. The personal representative, which would be the executor or administrator, gathers all the deceased person's assets. They also have to open a separate bank account for the estate. When someone passes away, most of the time the bank is going to close that account within a few days. Your representative will be required to open an account in the name of the estate. The estate is a separate legal entity which requires its own tax ID number. Once the attorney also has a process where they notify all the creditors of the estate. Please realize you are absolutely not responsible as the representative for the deceased person's debts. Those are paid through what is left in the deceased person's estate. So a lot of people are eager to tie things up and move things forward as quickly as possible. You do not want to pay the bills. Granted, you want to pay things to keep things running. You want to pay electric bills, insurance bills, things like that. You want to keep everything in good shape, but you do not want to pay medical bills. You do not want to pay credit card bills. Those people have to go through the official process. And then finally, the attorney works with the personal representative and they have to prepare and file an inventory. That is a list of all the property as of the date of death. Once that is done, usually the judge will give the okay to go ahead and close the estate and things can be resolved. I added this slide because every time I give this presentation, somebody wants to know about a trust. A trust, like a will, is a legal document that states how someone's property is to be distributed at death. It can handle both real estate and personal property. Trusts have the greatest PR in the world. Everybody thinks they need a trust. They hear probate and they think that's an awful, terrible term. Probate in Texas, if there's a valid will, if people are cooperating, is not complicated and not horribly expensive. It is different in other states. People like trust because it doesn't go through probate. For most people, there's not a reason to avoid probate. Trusts are very expensive. The best explanation I had is if you have a trust, all your costs are up front. If you have a will, the costs are at the back end when someone has passed away. The problem with trusts is that they're very complicated. When an attorney is doing their job correctly, they make sure that everything that should be in the trust is transferred to the trust. Just having the trust is not sufficient. All the property has to be transferred, and that's a pretty complicated process. There's also, the attorney makes a determination about whether it's best to transfer things to a trust. A lot of people put their home in a trust. That's not necessarily a good thing. Um, if the transfer isn't done correctly, you can you can lose your tax exemptions. If you decide you want to sell your house, say you want to downsize, you have to transfer it out of the trust so that you can sell it. There are some great reasons for trust. If you have young children, if you have disabled children, that's a way to protect them. Trusts are also great if you want to protect assets to qualify for Medicaid. Now let's go back to the main topic for today, how to clear title to inherited property. I was at the Earl Carl Institute for a long time, and the mission of my department was to one of the biggest things that we did was help people with heirship property, help people build generational wealth. Heirship property, a lot of people think it's the family home. I don't need to do anything about it. It's always been in my family. That is not true. If you don't go through the legal process of clearing title, that home will still be in the name. I had people that it had been in the family for more than 100 years, and that ancestor who originally bought the home still had the title to the house. If you don't probate a will or go through another process to clear title, that's not your home, and you don't have the legal rights to that home, either for benefits, for taking out loans, or for tax exemptions. Clear title means that no one else has a financial interest in your property. It means it is yours. It is 100% the owner's property. Clear title also means that there's no question of ownership, and that someone could go through the deed records of a county and easily trace the ownership history. If property hasn't been transferred or properly deeded to the new owner, the title is what is called cloudy. This often happens if somebody dies without a will or the family doesn't manage an estate. I do not have this in a slide, but this is another question that I run across all the time. Having a will does not mean that the property is automatically yours. You must absolutely go through the probate process in order to transfer the property. A lot of people will ask about the difference between a title and a deed. Title is not a piece of paper. Title means that someone has a legal right to the property. The deed is the piece of paper that conveys that right. So clear real estate title is not a document. It is the strength of your ownership claim. And it also means that there won't be any unexpected claims on the property. When I have cleared up people's estates, sometimes a lien will come up that nobody knew about. The children didn't even know about this claim on the property. So we have to go through the process of having those removed. The deed is just the document that transfers ownership to a new owner. A deed is common when you sell a house. It's also important to keep your own title clear. There was an excellent presentation earlier this summer, about title fraud, which sadly happens more often than you would hope. One thing to protect your property and to make sure your property stays in the family is to file a transfer on death deed. That is the easiest and least expensive way to transfer real estate to someone after you pass away. You can also prepare a will that's legally valid, and that will transfer the property. Clear title is critical because if you don't have clear title, if you live in a family home and there is a disaster, you will not qualify for FEMA or any state or county recovery assistance. You're also not eligible for any type of property tax relief like exemptions or deferrals. You're not able to take home improvement loans or other types of loans. You can't use your house as collateral if you don't have clear title. Like I said earlier, you absolutely have to probate your loved one's estate, or you will find out that you don't have clear title. Also, unless there were transfer on death beneficiaries, you can't access financial accounts if you don't go through the probate process. There are a few ways to clear title through the courts. If someone passes within 4 years, it's simple. You probate their will, or you go through the administration process. If it's been more than 4 years, and this happens, you can file an application to probate as muniment of title. That is a more simple process where someone has left a will, and the only thing that needs to happen is that the house needs to be transferred to whoever was named in the will as the homeowner. There's also a process called adverse possession. It's a pretty complicated legal standard, but if you meet those requirements, you can go through the court and have a petition for adverse possession to clear title to your home. Probate, as we talked about before, should be straightforward. If you have a valid will that's prepared and there's not any way that someone could contest it, you go to court, the judge determines whether the decedent left a valid will that's compliant with Texas law. And if the person did not leave a will or the will was not valid, you can file an application for administration. I always use this process as something to be done if it's been more than 4 years since someone has passed. You can absolutely do this at any time. It's just the one exception to the rule of probate must happen within 4 years. If the homeowner had a legally valid will and everybody who's legally entitled to that person's estate agrees with the will, you can do a really simple court process that's called muniment of title, where the judge will admit the will to probate and you record the final order and the will and the property records, and that transfers property. And that's a way to clear title as well. Adverse possession is something you've probably all heard about. This is a legal principle that allows you to go through the court and get a judge to give you legal ownership rights. You have to have lived on the property for a significant amount of time. It varies depending on other circumstances, but it's at least 15 years. The critical thing is you have to live on that property without permission. You also have to make it very clear that that is your property. You keep the lawn clean. Maybe you get your mail there. You know, everybody knows that's where you live, or it's a lot next door where you keep a nice garden. And you can use that process in specific circumstances. Excuse me. Another very common way to clear title, you do not go through the courts. Excuse me, just one second. It's called an affidavit of heirship. Affidavit of heirship is a legal document that gives property to all of the heirs of a deceased person. If a person did not have a will or the will wasn't probated, you can use this process. This is something that you do not need an attorney for. We have the instructions at our website, texaslawhelp.org. Ms. Nia will also send this information to you in an email after the presentation.
Ms. Lisa, go ahead and take a minute. Catch your breath. I see you. Go
Sorry.
ahead, grab the water. We okay. We can wait a minute.
So this is Mabel. While we're waiting, I forgot or neglected to mention that my colleague Rosalind Alexander from HCAD has also joined us today, and she is answering questions in the chat regarding exemption related matters. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Mabel.
Thank you very much, Miss Nia and Miss Mabel, for giving me that break. I'm better now.
All right.
So the affidavit of heirship is a legal document that is basically like a family tree. You list out, the person who passed, their marriages, their children, if they didn't have children, nieces and nephews, but it's a detailed description of their family history. It has to be signed by two people who knew that person and their family history well. They're called disinterested witnesses, which means they cannot legally inherit. So your kids can't sign it, but an aunt, an uncle, a longtime family friend can absolutely sign it. And it does have to be notarized. This is going to get boring because I talk about this in several places, but you have to include the full legal description. Your property tax bill will state legal description when you receive it every year. That is not the full legal description. You need to get a copy of your deed, which you can get it from the county clerk's office and the county where the property is located. There's also a website that I've personally used, texasfile.com, and it's fairly easy to search. I don't know about all the counties in Texas. The Harris County clerk allows you to search property records. I have been doing it for many years and it can be quite difficult. Um, so I recommend, calling the county clerk, asking for their assistance, or going to texasfile.com. You file the affidavit of heirship and the county where the property is located. There is a filing fee. It is not expensive. It's in Harris County $25 for the first page and a few dollars for every page after that. So you're looking at roughly 35 to $50. It has to be filed in that county. Once the affidavit of heirship is filed, the people listed on the affidavit of heirship have title to the house. If there is a surviving spouse, that would be the surviving spouse. If both the original, both spouses have passed, it would be the children or whoever it is that's the legal next of kin. Now, a small estate affidavit and affidavit of heirship can get confusing. A small estate affidavit is a court process. It is the one probate process where most counties do not require you to have an attorney. However, you can only use it to transfer property to a surviving spouse or minor children. The only other time to use a small estate affidavit is if the person didn't own any real estate, but maybe they had a couple of bank accounts. You may be able to use the small estate affidavit to transfer the bank accounts. Affidavit of heirship is a terrific and inexpensive way to transfer home either to a surviving spouse, adult children, or other legal heirs. You can use an affidavit of heirship instead of probate if the home is the only estate asset. We use them all the time if it's been a number of years since the person had passed. Now that you've got clear title to your house, please take a minute to make sure that your family in the future does not go through the same battle, because it can be a battle at times. I absolutely love the transfer on death deed. Transfer on death deed is a very simple, inexpensive way for a homeowner to transfer a home to whoever they wish upon their death. With a transfer on death deed, your rights are not affected during your lifetime. You can still sell the property. You can still get a loan. You still are eligible for all the property tax exemptions. You own that property 100% until you pass away. You can also change the beneficiary or cancel the deed entirely. It is absolutely yours that you can do with you please. The two critical things, you absolutely have to have, again, the legal description, and the deed must be filed in the county where the property is located before the homeowner passes away. If you prepare a transfer on death deed and you keep it in a safe place with your will, it is not valid. It has to be filed in the property records. A lot of people have heard about ladybird deeds. Ladybird deeds are another way to pass property after someone has passed away. Ladybird deeds are similar to the transfer on death deed. However, if the homeowner is incapacitated, it can be signed by their power of attorney. So ladybird deeds are really common when someone may have dementia or some other type of illness and they're not able to sign that deed themselves. Their power of attorney can sign it. So this is a way to transfer the property after someone is ill. Ladybird deeds are only accepted in 5 states, which includes Texas. Transfer on death deed, I don't remember the exact number, but transfer on death deeds are acceptable in at least 30 states. Both transfer on death deeds and ladybird deeds avoid probate, which saves your heirs a lot of time and money, and Medicaid estate recovery. When someone passes away, Medicaid can seek reimbursement of the expenses of what they spent on your loved one's behalf. If that home does not pass through probate, Medicaid does not and will not try to seek recovery. I am not going to go through this chart. I have it in here because you'll get a copy of my presentation and you can hit pause and look through it. This explains the differences between transfer on death and the ladybird deed. My general takeaway is if the homeowner is able to sign, transfer on death deeds are much better. They're a lot safer. Ladybird deeds add some complications. We have a toolkit at Texas Law Help, which allows you to create your own transfer on death deed. Like I said about the affidavit of heirship, you need to get a copy of the current deed to get the legal description, and you need to file this with the county clerk's office. We have a lot of wonderful resources. We are rich with resources in Harris County. Our website, Texas Law Help, provides information to all. We also have attorneys available from 10 to 2, Monday through Thursday, that can assist any Texas resident. Earl Carl Property Preservation is at Texas Southern University, Thurgood Marshall School of Law. They are an amazing program that can help you with inherited property, as well as other property concerns, any type of housing stability. Lone Star Legal Aid is wonderful legal aid for Houston and all of East Texas that can help with most legal issues, as well as Houston Volunteer Lawyers. They are the same. I love referring everybody to Legal Line. There are no income requirements with Legal Line. The Houston Bar Association has this program called Legal Line that you can talk to an attorney for free. They cannot take your case, but they can answer questions. They can help you understand the path to take. Now, Houston Lawyer Referral Service is a great way. I always tell people, ask your friends, ask your neighbors, ask them if they have lawyers they worked with that they like. Not also ask them if they have attorneys they didn't like, because you want to find somebody that you like, that you trust, that you're comfortable working with. But Houston Lawyer Referral Service is a great opportunity to find attorneys that you may need. Thank you so much for your time. I will be sticking around to answer questions, and I'm going to handle it over to Miss Mabel and HCAD.
Miss Lisa, before you hand that over to HCAD, can you kind of give a couple little steps first of like what happens after your loved one passes? What's the process like? What do you
Thank
do?
you. Yeah, I cover so much, and there's always more that can be included. But when someone passes away, the first thing I tell you is take care of yourself. It's a very, it is being, as Nia will agree with me 100%, being the executor is absolutely not an honor. It is a lot of work. And it's especially, I always laugh. I have been doing this for a very long time. And I was so honored when my aunt named me her executor. I had no idea what it would be like to be doing all that work when you're in the middle of grieving and you've got you've got all the other heirs bugging you because they want their inheritance. They want it now. And when is everything going to be finished? Please take the time to take care of yourself. Take the time to mourn your loved one, to be with your family and celebrate their life. You have 4 years to go through the probate process in Texas. That doesn't mean wait till 3 years and 9 months, but you don't have to do it the next day. So what happens with the probate process is, you'll have an attorney who will figure out the best way for you to move forward. You will have a very brief court hearing, probably less than 5 minutes, where the judge will approve the will, if there's a will. If there's not a will, but the whole family agrees on who should be the administrator of the estate, it's also straightforward. Then what the executor has to do is make sure they have all of the assets that that person owned. Make sure that everything is kept. Make sure everything is still insured. You might have to deal with some difficulties. If there's vehicles, homes, you want to make sure that process, because it is your personal duty to make sure that everything is kept safe. You also have to get a tax ID number, which is like a social security number, but for businesses. And you have to open a separate account for the estate. The personal representative does not take over that deceased person's checking account. They have to open a new account because that estate is considered, it's like a business. It's a separate legal entity. And that deceased person's account is closed faster than you can believe. I mean, faster than you have notified the bank. And then you go through that process. I don't know if there's anything else. Oh, very important question. If your loved one if you keep your will in a safe deposit box, please make sure that the person who's your executor not just knows where that box is, but has permission at the bank, at that financial organization, to go into it. Because if they don't have permission to go into the safe deposit box, the bank cannot let them in. It doesn't even matter. I mean, there's issues where, well, I know it was in a safe deposit box, but it could be one of 5 banks. are, I've got the key. I know where the box is. They can't legally let you in unless
Yep.
you are listed as an authorized user of that box. They have to go through and get, yeah, we we have the person who can tell you all about it. You have to go and get permission from a judge to be allowed to open that box, which will delay everything quite a bit more.
Yep. It happens.
It
It
happens more
happens.
than you think. And I mean,
And it gets worse when the bank branch moves and then they move the box and then nobody can tell you where the safety deposit box is now.
oh my goodness, that's
Imagine
even
that.
worse than I thought.
Imagine
Banks
that.
change. Banks get bought out. Banks move. You want to make sure. I always tell the story of people that had all their documents nice and safe in a safe. That safe got picked up by floodwaters and carried away. You can have just as much of a problem with a bank that moves and nobody knows where the box is anymore. So, spend a lot of time thinking about the safe. One great thing with wills that I completely forgot to mention, you can have that stored at the courthouse. There is a process. All the courts in Texas do this. It's called keeping a safekeeping a will, where you take your will to the courthouse and you pay. It's not very much. It's might be $10 or $15,
$1. Mhm.
and you can have the court keep your will. That will be a place that is absolutely safe, and you can let whoever executor know is the original is with the courthouse. Because, like I said earlier, if they can't find the original, they're going to have to go through some hoops to get it through probate.
And it's not public record if you file it before you
No,
pass.
no, thank you. It is absolutely not public record. Your will is public record once you go through probate, but I don't think that's reason enough to worry about avoiding probate. The only time I have seen where I understood why somebody would have a trust because they wanted private is it was the former owner of the Texans, Bob McNair. And I can understand why he wouldn't want anybody to be able to have access to his business. But for most of us, it's not worth it. Because
Hmm.
you're looking at, a few $1,000s, or if you can go through AMS free to get your will done, as opposed to $5,000 to $15,000. And I may be underestimating that because I have not been in private practice for some time.
Okay. Ms. Marla, you have your hand up. We're going to answer your question really quick, and then we're going to move on because we don't want to get into too many questions before we get to the end of the presentation.
I'm absolutely here through the end of the presentation to answer questions. I'm not going away. But if you have a quick question, Miss Marla. And you are on mute.
Okay. Maybe she's not unsure how to unmute.
Oh, I thought I did unmute.
Now
Okay,
you're here.
go ahead.
If you have a beneficiary on your checking and savings account, can the bank lock down that account upon your death?
If you have a transfer on death beneficiary, the bank locks it down, but whoever those beneficiaries are go into the bank. They have to have the death certificate, they have to have their ID, and then they would be able to have access to it.
Thank you.
And I say this all the time. I had a case where I felt so sorry for my clients. Their dear friend passed away. Besides his personal property, he had a bank account with a few $1,000s. He used a friend's nickname instead of the name on her driver's license. They had to go through probate and spend a lot of the money in probate on getting that clarified. So please make sure you have the correct name for your beneficiaries. So I am going to go ahead and pass it off to Miss Mabel. And like I said, I'm not going anywhere.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Let me get my screen up. Okay.
All right.
It looked good.
Swap view.
Swap view. Okay. All righty. Good evening. Good
Now, there
afternoon.
you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Mabel Menifee, and I also want to remind you that my colleague Rosalind Alexander is in the chat room, and between the two of us, we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. If there are questions that we can't answer, we will certainly put you in contact with someone who can. So, beginning with that, I know that Many of you, as Lisa talked about the probate process and clearing title for property after someone is deceased, many of you may have never dealt with property taxes or how that all relates to clearing title. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the important piece to remember is, we'll get to it, relates to the exemptions that may be on the property. So it's a really good thing to know a little bit about this process, even if you don't remember it all, so it doesn't throw a wrench into the process of trying to clear title on inherited property. So just quickly, everybody kind of knows why we have property taxes. The state, we have no income tax in Texas, so those taxes go to support lots of the local government expenses and revenue for schools and roads, police, fire protection, and that sort of thing is what they're primarily for. At HCAT, well, in Texas, property tax laws originate with the state legislature as part of the property tax code, and in some cases, the state constitution. Appraisal districts like HCAT are subunits of state government. I know a lot of people tend to think that we are part of county government, but we are not. We work under the state constitution, and the oversight organization for appraisal districts like HCAT is the Texas Comptroller. So quickly, just want to kind of, as we get into the discussion, I want a couple of things that I want to make clear in terms of what appraisal districts do, so that we can understand what exemptions and all of that is about. Is that we appraise all the property in the county, whether it's residential, commercial, it can be agricultural, industrial, and something called business personal. And it is the responsibility of appraisal districts to try and reach that 100% of market value. In other words, what the current market is reflecting as your property value, because that is what's being paid by buyers on the open market. And we also administer exemptions, and that's going to be the primary subject today. One of the other things we do, because there are deadlines that property owners and HCAT has to follow, is because each year we have to certify the appraisal rolls, or in other words, let all of the taxing jurisdictions know what that appraisal roll for the county is, so they can then figure out their budgets and set their tax rates. Term jurisdiction, I try not to overlook the fact that some people might not know what we're talking about, but jurisdictions simply refer to those taxing entities that you get tax bills from. The appraisal, I mentioned there's some important dates. It's always important to remember January the 1st as the date of appraisal. And if you are in the process of going through a clearing title, then January the 1st, whatever exemptions that the deceased may have had on their property, they are good up until the following January the 1st. That is when the exemptions may no longer be valid if that property owner no longer lives in that dwelling. May 15th is always the protest deadline, and if you are a property owner, you're probably pretty familiar with the protest deadline being May 15th. Of course, tax bills are mailed out usually in October and November, and those don't come from HCAT. They come from folks like they come from the tax assessors, and Shay's going to delve into that subject a little bit after I'm completed. They do not come from HCAT. And then, of course, February the 1st, if those taxes have not been paid, they become delinquent. Appraisals, just simply, I mentioned before, this is just kind of how it's done here in Harris County, which is the largest county in Texas, and the third largest is in the United States. We cover 1.9 million parcels, parcels being individual parcels of land, and there are over 500 taxing jurisdictions here, where depending on where you live, you usually pay 2, 3, 4, 5 of those jurisdictions, but it all depends on where you live in the county, which as to which ones you are are going to be assessed by. Quick notice about appraised value and market value, and that's always a big part of your property valuations. The appraised value is the number that jurisdictions use to calculate your tax bill. Those are going to be that could be the same as the market value if that home or property has no exemptions on it. And it could be lower because each year with exemptions, that home is going to be protected with a 10% appraisal increase cap, meaning that any jumps in value cannot exceed more than 10% in any given year. And that is, of course, for properties with homestead exemptions. The market value can be different in that that's the value at which a property is going to sell on the open market. And that's based on what the current market looks like, what properties are selling for. And HCAT's primary role, besides administering exemptions, is to establish that annual market value. So, and then let's talk a little bit about exemptions. So what are they? Exemptions are what a property owner can apply for and receive if they're eligible. And those are administered, as I said, by HCAT. What do? They actually exempt a portion of that property from taxation. So, and that's only going to be for the primary residence only. That's the residence they've lived in, not other properties that they may have owned. And these are used by the taxing authorities in calculating your bills. Once the exemptions are put into place, and a portion of that value may be removed based on the exemption, then that lower amount is what the taxes are going to be calculated upon. So what are some of the most common ones that typically your a person is going to have on their residence? There's the general resident homestead exemption, which I said is available to anyone homeowner who has where that it is their primary residence. There are also some additional ones. There's an additional add-on for property owners who are over the age of 65. Excuse me, there's a surviving spouse exemption, and we'll talk about that one. And there's a disability exemption. There are a number of exemptions for veterans. And then there are some other service-related exemptions that involve first responders and the like. So general resident homestead exemption is what someone may have had, and it's important to keep this in mind. They have to own and occupy the home as their primary residence. And these are also important. I mentioned what I've been talking about, what your relative or the deceased may have had. It's also important to remember that if you're going to take over occupancy of that home, and it becomes your primary residence, it's very important for you to know about these, the opportunity to get these exemptions once you've cleared title and are officially own and occupy the property. So the general resident homestead exemption, as I said, for your primary residence, and again, it provides that 10% appraisal increase cap, which comes really in handy when we've seen, particularly what we've seen after COVID, with property values in some neighborhoods skyrocketing. This provides a buffer, a little bit of protection for so that homeowners don't get hit with those huge increases each year, which has, unfortunately, sometimes in certain places around Houston, has been the case. You also get, here's an example of when we talk about exemptions. This one is one that is required by the state, and it is a $100,000 school tax exemption. That's required by state law. What does that mean? It means essentially that the first $100,000 of value on your property, you are not liable for school taxes. So example might be if say your home is valued at $300,000, that $100,000 school tax exemption means you only pay taxes to a school on $200,000 of that. There are other exemptions that are going to be offered by other jurisdictions. The city of Houston offers one for the general resident homestead. So does the county. So do some certain school districts may even offer more than that 100,000, but that is the amount that the state requires them to offer. The over 65 and disability exemption, these are relatively the same. So you qualified for the entire year that you turn 65. So no matter how late in the year you may be turning 65, you will get those exemptions for that entire year. The disability exemption, we have these grouped together because basically you get the same benefits. The disability exemption, but you can only have one or the other. Disability exemption you can receive once you are receiving Social Security, unable to work under the Federal Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance Act, or in some cases, you may not be receiving Social Security, so you you can also apply for this exemption by having your doctor submit a physician statement, a form that HCAT actually has on our website that you can pull. So what are some of the benefits of these? Again, they do provide additional benefits from over and above the general resident homestead exemption. So they have a school tax ceiling or freeze. Basically, that means your school taxes for whatever year you turn 65 are going to freeze, or they will stay at that same level unless the value of the property falls, in which case the ceiling can go down. The only way it can go above what you paid that year is if you do some improvements to the home, which add value to it in terms of you build an extra room, you add square footage, or you build a swimming pool or tennis court in the backyard. And then of course you maintain all of the exemptions that someone who has the general resident homestead exemption can have. And you're going to be eligible for things like a tax deferral and the opportunity to pay your taxes in installments without penalties. And Shay's going to talk a little bit more about that, but that's some additional exemptions. And again, there may be other various exemptions that are going to be offered by the individual taxing jurisdictions, such as the city of Houston and the county. That exemption you got with the general resident homestead exemption will increase. The over 55 surviving spouse exemption, this is just one that simply provides if the married couple who was receiving the over 65 exemption because one of them had turned 65, if that person passes away, the surviving spouse, as long as he or she is over 55, maintains all of those exemptions. So they won't be interrupted. Maybe they've had them in place for 7 or 8 years, so they continue to stay at that amount. And again, you can even transfer the school tax ceiling to another dwelling, and you'll be eligible for those tax deferrals and paying taxes in installments. The immediate resident homestead exemption, I have that one in here simply because that's something that individuals who are moving into a new home upon qualifying, it's usually a new home or a home where the previous owner had no exemptions. So if you are moving into a property that did not have exemptions on it, you can apply for this immediate homestead exemption, which gives you the opportunity to start those exemptions the month that you moved into the home, as opposed to waiting till the following January the 1st, which is the appraisal magic number for so many of the other things that we do. But you can get this immediate homestead exemption on a prorated basis, depending on the month that you move in. So if you move in May, you're going to get those exemptions basically prorated for 7 months or so. If the previous owner did have exemptions, then you're going to benefit from whatever they were for that rest of that year. For instance, if you're 30 or 35 and that person had an over 65 exemption, then that's going to save you some substantial amount of money for that first year. Okay, this is one that I really want to talk about a little bit more in detail. Lisa had mentioned it in her presentation, but the airship exemption, that is something that you can receive if you are you are an heir to the property, but there are multiple heirs. So you're the one that's living in the home. You're the one who's paying the taxes. That airship property refers to land or homes that have been passed down without a clear or an updated title. So this, again, this is what happens when a parent dies without a will and there are 3 or 4 siblings or to share ownership. In the past, few years ago, you were not able to, up until a few years ago, you were not able to receive those exemptions because you did not have full ownership. Now, you may be eligible for that, for an exemption based on heirship. And that looks like this. When you, in order to receive that heir exemption, you would need to apply for it with HCAD. And that would be on our homestead exemption application, section 3. When you start filling it out, that's section 3 will trigger whether or not you need to apply for the airship exemption, because it will ask if that property for which you're submitting the application is heir property. So there's some important information that you need to pay attention to at that point. Do other heir property owners occupy the property and live in the property as well? So you'll be able to provide some additional information, including an affidavit establishing your ownership interest in the property. There is a form for that on our website. And then we would need the death certificate for the previous owner, a copy of the property's most recent utility bill. People kind of wonder why you need that. It's just to show it determines that the property is actually being lived in. Then you can provide a citation of any court records relating to that applicant's ownership of the property if they are available. One thing I do want to stress with this is that this can often sometimes seem a little bit confusing on how to get this done. And please, by all means, do contact HCAD, and we will have an exemption specialist who will be more than happy to walk you through this process to make sure that you, if at all possible, can receive this airship exemption. It's so important that families are able to continue to maintain that property despite any confusions that come about as a result of multiple airships. So we definitely want you to pay attention to this if you find yourself in that situation. Then, of course, there are a number of veterans exemptions available, and this is just a list of some of those that you can apply for if you call HCAD. We now have a system where if you call us and you say that you will be asked if you are a veteran, and if you are, you're going to be put in a special queue that will help, that's specifically for veterans and to help them walk through that process as well. How to apply for them? Very simple. You can mail the paper form in. They're on all of them are on our website. Or some that you can actually apply through our mobile app, which is can be downloaded through the Apple Store or Google. Or you can send us an email. You can take those forms, many of them are fillable online, and send that in through an email. So depending on when it's submitted, when you submit that, processing time could take a little bit longer, and that's usually in the spring as people, excuse me, start to process those once they receive those annual value notices, as well as that's just a busy time for HCAD. But as long as you submit it within that year, you are approved, those exemptions will apply for that year. as long as you submit them. Now, there is a question that people tend to ask about, well, gee whiz, I forgot to do this. I didn't think about it. And it's been, and 4 years have passed, and maybe I moved into a relative's home who had some exemptions that they were over 65 that I was not aware that I was not eligible for them. I didn't know that I needed to do this. Well, once you are able to apply for your own exemptions, keep in mind that don't wait any longer. So keep in mind that we can go back the current year plus 2 years and apply those exemptions to your account. So in that case, you would be receiving a refund. A how-to video, if you have any problems with filling out that exemptions form, there is a how-to video on our website that will allow you, that you can actually fill out the form as it, and follow along on that on that video as you fill out the form. There are also a number of other helpful videos and lots of information available on our website. I do want to just add a caveat for new homeowners that be wary of sometimes you're going to receive solicitations in the mail offering what they call a designation of homestead. And it's usually for a fee. Anytime someone says to you, oh, you want to save money, let us get this homestead for you for free. Let us get this homestead for you for X amount. Keep in mind that that is totally free. All you need to do is contact HCAT or fill out the form and send it to us, and it is totally free to the property owner. Many people end up doing that and then realize I just spent $75 for something that I didn't have to. Okay, this is something that if you are taking care of you're taking care of a deceased of an heir's deceased property, person's property, and you need a little bit of a reminder that making sure the exemptions on the home are correct, applied correctly. We send this card out. It's a little postcard that we send out usually in December, early January, to all folks that have exemptions. And it simply reminds you of the exemptions that are currently on that property. If you get that in the mail and it's everything is correct, then don't worry about it. Just throw it in the drawer, toss it in the drawer. If though, however, let this serve as a reminder to folks that may have just moved into a property, particularly when it's an inherited property, to make sure that those exemptions on that card are correct, or then you want to contact HCAD to make sure that that they are, that you change those, you correct those, keeping in mind that if you're receiving exemptions that you are not eligible for, then you can be responsible for back taxes on for making up the amount that you should have paid up to 5 years, up to the 5 previous years. So it's important to make sure that that information is correct. This is what our website looks like. It's when you open it, this is our landing page, and it is at www.hcad.org. Again, if you're interested in property search, up there in that second blue line, there's property search, and there are all kinds of videos. And then again, the forms that I have been talking about, and different information that is available right there. And of course, if you want to contact HCAD, please feel free to do so. We're located out on the Northwest Freeway at the Hollister-Tidwell exit, and you don't really want to drive all the way out there, but some people do. And then our general phone number, you can call us and speak to the appropriate specialist. Then again, our website, and then you can contact us online. There is a contact form that you can use, which provides, which will more than likely get you directly to the the specialist that you need to speak to because you're asked to provide some additional information. And then there's our email help@hcad.org, keeping in mind that may eventually be going away, but for right now, we continue to answer those questions as well. And I think that is all my presentation for today. I will be here to ask any questions. I will be here to answer any questions after Shay's presentation. At this point, I am going to turn it over to the Tax Assessor Collector's Office. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Mabel.
Thank you, Miss Mabel. All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am back. Let me go ahead and get started with sharing my screen for my presentation. Okay. Can everyone see everything okay?
It's coming up.
Perfect. All
No,
right.
there it
So
goes.
wonderful. So as I introduced myself earlier, my name is Shay Pinkowski, and I'm with the office of Annette Ramirez, who is your Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, along with your voter registrar and your office for registration of vehicles and title transfers. So we recently elected our newest tax assessor collector this past November. She is a wealth of knowledge. She's been in the business of property tax collecting for about 23 years now, and she previously oversaw the Aldine Independent School District's in-house property tax collection. So you may have heard of her before. But we have a little bit of information about her here if you'd like to read up on her. We're very excited to have her new ideas and new thoughts coming into our office. So if you see a bill with her name on it, it's going to be changing from the previous tax assessor collectors. So part of what the tax assessor collector does for Harris County is we collect for property taxes for the counties located in Harris, or for the jurisdictions located in Harris County. There's over 80 of them currently, along with additional property taxes like PIDs and things like that, which don't necessarily apply to everyone, but you do see them on occasion. We register your vehicles, we process the documentation for title transfers, and we provide services like your handicap parking placards, special plates, and things like that. And in addition to that, we register and maintain the voter roll. So whenever you are getting ready to register yourself to vote, our office is the office that you can do that in. So just as a quick overview, the Harris County Tax Office maintains approximately 1.7 million tax accounts, which generates about $8 billion in property taxes that get dispersed to all of the jurisdictions that we collect for. So we collect for quite a few schools, along with, of course, Harris County. ESDs, which are emergency services districts that handle your firefighters, your emergency services, like your ambulances, and of course your Harris County Flood Control, City of Houston, and most commonly Houston ISD. But all of those amounts that we collect from you are dispersed to those jurisdictions based off of their needs and how we are able to provide funding for these essential services. So there have been quite a few changes in the past few years. In the last 4 by themselves, the exemptions that we've had for property taxes have increased, meaning that in the general view, your property taxes, as in how much you pay, has decreased, which is good news for a lot of homeowners who have been able to benefit from that increase for the over 65 and disabled exemptions. The City of Houston, the Harris County taxes, along with your school general homestead. I'm sure a lot of you were a part of that process where we elected to increase the general homestead exemption for our schools from, I believe it was 60,000 prior to 2024, and then in 2024 we increased it to 100,000. And again, as Ms. Mabel mentioned earlier, our homestead exemptions became available for the property from the date in which we move into the property, as opposed to from the first full year in which that property is in our names. So there have been a lot of changes made that have reduced our taxes, and this upcoming year, there will be another election for increasing those exemptions again. So please be sure to do some research and read up on it if you can, so that you can make an informed decision. Your property tax bill, you'll see this at the end of the year, usually starting in November. The bill itself is a whole sheet of paper. It includes a detailed list of the jurisdictions that are collected for your property, along with your tax rate for each one of those jurisdictions, how much that assessable taxable value is for that property. So with your exemptions included, how much we're calculating those taxes based off of. And then at the bottom, you'll see something that we refer to as a payment coupon. And that payment coupon will show you, of course, the address in which you can mail a return item for making your payment. It'll show the amount enclosed. So you'll write however much you're paying for your property taxes, and the account number, the address that this is in regards to. And this is what you would include with your check if you were to send this payment to us in the mail, or if you come into one of our branch offices, you can provide this to us as well so that we're able to see which property it is specifically that you are viewing in order to make that payment. So that's the statement that you would normally receive in the mail. You also have the option of receiving your tax statement through an email. This is something that you have to sign up for. We have it on our website where you're able to log in and request for your statements to be sent to you via an e-statement. Do keep in mind that whenever you set yourself up for receiving e-statements, you no longer receive a paper bill. So if you sign up for your statement to be received to you electronically, you would no longer receive a paper bill in the mail. So just make sure to keep an eye out if you do have that set up to check frequently towards the end of the year for whenever that tax bill starts coming out. Or alternatively, if it's easier for you to check on our website, you can check on our website to receive your tax bill as well. So just a brief explanation as to how taxes are calculated. We use the taxable value from the appraisal district. Now, the taxable value is not the property value itself, but it's the appraised value of your property minus any exemptions that are applicable to you. So that homestead that was described earlier, over 65, disabled veterans exemptions, they're all taken into account. And what results from that is your taxable value. That's the value on which we are able to tax your property on. That is multiplied by a tax rate, which is determined by each jurisdiction separately. So every jurisdiction determines their own tax rates towards the end of the summer. So this upcoming process is going to be happening here in the next couple of months. And whenever you multiply those two together, it results in the total for your tax bill. So that total amount that you would actually pay is the result of that calculation. So I know Ms. Mabel spoke on this extensively in her process, but I'm going to go ahead and re-explain it here again. But our homestead exemptions reduce your taxes for property owners who live and reside and own the home in which they are being taxed on. So without any exemptions whatsoever, the tax bill for a property of about $342,000 would be about a little over $7,000. When you have a homestead exemption on that property, the value is reduced and we tax based off of that reduced value. So you save approximately a little over $2,000 just from having that homestead exemption placed onto your property. And it results in a lower tax bill of closer to $5,000 than $7,000. Whenever you have the homestead exemption and you're over the age of 65, or you have the homestead exemption and you're a disabled persons, those savings get increased. So your exemptions increase, which reduces how much you pay for how much your taxable value is, and that reduces how much you pay. So with the homestead and the over 65 exemption on this property of $342,000, you end up saving a little over $5,000, and your tax bill gets reduced to just a little over $1,500 or so. So those exemptions are really important just on the basis of being able to save you money and helping and reduce the amount that you would pay for your property taxes, but especially when it comes to the long-term benefits of having these exemptions on your property, such as, those freezes, those caps that you get later on, and I'll discuss those a little further on, but just so that you can visually see the difference between non-exempted property, the homestead exempted property, and homestead and over 65. In addition to the exemptions that we normally offer at any time of year, for those occasions in which we are impacted by a disaster, so like the derecho that we had a couple this past year, to hurricanes and tornadoes, because we do get a lot of that kind of inclement weather, property owners can claim a temporary property tax exemption when those disaster um, impacts occur. So it is something that you have to apply for. You can still go onto the Harris Central Appraisal District's website in order to get that form and submit that into their office. But make sure that whenever you do, if this were to happen, that you include documents in regards to what damages you sustained during this disaster. So anything that you can include, such as inspections, the photos, any repair estimates, or additional information that might be helpful in order to show just how much damage was done to your property so that they can make an informed decision. But this is available for whenever we do have that inclement weather or a disaster occurs. That is when this comes into play. So it's not a constant, but it happens on occasion. So I mentioned this a bit earlier, and you might have heard about this from other folks who are over the age of 65 or disabled, but there is something called a tax limitation, which you'll hear referred to as a tax ceiling or tax freeze is what I hear most of the time. But what a tax ceiling does is it limits the increase of your property taxes for school, along with some other jurisdictions, just depending on how they're run. But they limit how much your property taxes can be collected on. So this applies to homesteaded properties of property owners over the age of 65 or who are disabled. And these ceilings would reduce how much taxes you are required to pay. So say, for instance, the first year that you turn over the age of 6 or that you turn 65 and have that over 65 exemption placed onto your property, the following year, say if the first year you paid $300, the following year you could not be collected on more than $300. You could pay less depending on the value of your property or the taxing rate, depending on what the situation is, but you would not be collected on more than that $300 that you paid that initial year. And that continues to go forward. So say, for instance, if your taxes drop below the $300, you would pay that lesser amount. But if they go higher than the 300 and the calculations state that you would pay closer to 400 or 500 or whatever the case may be, you would only pay that $300 on that school jurisdiction um, in order to maintain with that tax ceiling. So that's something really important that a lot of folks don't recognize, and they look at their calculations and they wonder, well, how does the math work? This isn't, the math doesn't make any sense. And that's why. It's because it's not something that's necessarily calculated. It's what's based on the history of your property tax payments and what it was prior to that or in that first year of having that over 65 exemption. Another benefit of that over 65 exemption or that disability exemption, in addition to your disabled veterans exemptions, those who are applicable for those, is a tax deferral. Now, tax deferral is a postponement of payment for your property taxes. Those taxes are still due. You're still required to pay your taxes. However, as opposed to the general way of being where you are required to pay your property taxes by the end of January each year, if you have a tax deferral, it protects you from additional penalty fees that would normally be incurred if you don't pay by that date. With a tax deferral active, you pay a 5% interest fee per year. It's not automatic. It calculates as it goes through the year. So really, the amount of penalty that or the amount of interest that you pay overall is drastically lowered when you have that tax deferral. This is very helpful for those folks who are on, say, a limited income. They're not able to pay the full amount or the full brunt of your taxes at the end of January. In addition to just protecting yourself from, in like difficult circumstances in which you are unable to pay your taxes or you forget, or you're not in the position where you're able to pay them easily. Say you're out of town, you're out of the country, and you don't have a way of coming to pay your property taxes. This assists you in reducing how much an interest you would pay, and it does not collect any penalty this way. So super helpful for those folks who are needing that additional time or that peace of mind when it comes to paying your property taxes. In addition to helping reduce how much you pay for penalty and interest, it also prevents foreclosure on properties that in which you say are over the age of 65. You're living in this home, but you are on a limited income. You're not able to pay your property taxes, or you're not able to pay a general normal payment agreement as one normally would be required to do. But having that tax deferral prevents that foreclosure, and it prevents you from having to pay those additional attorney's fees that would normally incur from delinquent property taxes. So super helpful, very great of a help whenever it comes to that special type of situation. And again, it does apply to residential homesteads for those who have the over 65 exemption, or disabled homeowners, or disabled veteran. There is a note on here that you please contact your mortgage company if you are still making payments on the property through a mortgage company. If you refinance, whatever the situation may be, that you contact your bank or your financing institution in order to verify that you are able to have a deferral on your property tax accounts. Because what happens a lot is someone will apply for the deferral. But while they have that deferral, they're making their payments to their bank. Their bank sees that they have not paid their property taxes. And they are required, because they have an interest in the property, to pay those property taxes off as soon as possible. So the bank will pay those property taxes because those taxes are still due. However, the bank will then turn around and then require that you pay the bank in order to make up for that payment that would have been made to your property taxes. So make sure that you contact your bank first before you go and apply for this deferral, because it can help you and be able to be of assistance. Now, when you have a deferral, all of those postponed taxes, say you're unable to make the full payment or you're unable to make any payments for your property taxes, and then you decide that you want to sell the property, or unfortunately the owner of the property passes away. When that happens, any of those leftover taxes that have not been paid and that had been postponed for all this time, or for however many years that you've had this deferral on your property, those taxes are due. Now, you have 181 days in which to pay those property taxes at that nice 5% interest rate that had collected for every year that had passed. However, once those 181 days have passed, that deferral is no longer active, and you get collected the total amount with penalty and interest for what would have accrued from the time in which they had passed. So it's very important that if you decide to go through and apply for a deferral, that you have this conversation with your heirs, with those who are going to be maintaining the property after you're gone, that they be aware that any taxes that are owed up to that point or that any of those taxes that are owed are going to be the responsibility of the heirs whenever this current homeowner passes away. So just keep that in mind. It is a very great help, but it is one of those things that you want to make sure that everyone is aware of whenever the time comes, so that you're able to make those good decisions whenever it comes down to actually settling the terms of your will and your estate. For those of us who are not over the age of 65, are not disabled, or are not disabled veterans, there are still other methods in which you can pay for your property taxes even after they're delinquent. We offer flexible payment plans for properties, which are homesteads. So we have 12 to 36 month payment agreements. Usually they'll do it in terms of a year, so 12, 24, 36. It is a financial planning tool. It helps you pay off those taxes and avoid collection efforts, foreclosure efforts, and foreclosure actions. And if you are able to have this payment agreement created prior to the attorneys beginning a collection on the account, you can avoid those attorney collection fees as well. This also is applicable towards business property or non-homesteaded property. But the homestead plan is really also included in there, but they have that additional 12 to 36 months for business and non-home and non-residential property. We have 12-month payment agreements that you are able to go and request to be applied to your account. For the homesteaded plans, when you're making those payments, there is still penalty and interest collected on the account. Those penalty and interest fees don't go away. We can't remove them. But what the homesteaded plan does is it freezes the penalty at the percentage of which the month that you create the agreement on. So in February, that's 7%, and then it's 1% interest per month. So that continues to accrue that way, but it's at a lesser rate than it would normally. For other non-residents payment agreements, it's a 12-month payment plan, and the accrued penalty and interest will accrue as normal. It would accrue at that normal 7% for February, 9% for March, and it continues to accrue. And those penalty and interest fees are on the state comptroller's website, or you can ask later on if you need that information. But those penalty and interest fees continue to accrue as normal. Either of these payment agreements can be created by giving our office a call, by sending us an email, or going online to request for a payment agreement to be set up for you. They are also able to assist you with getting these set up in any of our branch offices. And these payment agreements are set to where you would have to pay prior to the end of each month. So whether that's at the beginning of the month or at the end of each month, that is when those payments are due, is before the end of that month. Let's see. So another option that is available towards our over 65 folks, if you are not comfortable with the idea of having a deferral and then your taxes being due at a later time, we don't have just the regular payment agreement available to you. If you prefer to have that method, you are more than welcome to do so. But there's another option for our over 65, our disabled homeowners, and disabled veterans along with their surviving spouses, which is called a quarterly payment plan. And what that does is it separates your total amount due for property taxes into 4 equal amounts. And when those 4 equal amounts would be due once at the end of January, once at the end of March, once at the end of May, and once at the end of July. And you do not get collected on penalty or interest for those accounts. There's no penalty or interest if you are paying these timely by the end of each of those months. And you're able to do so just by contacting our office and requesting that your account be set up for that quarterly payment if you have those exemptions on your account. So you do have to contact us first. It has to be approved, and we have to give you verification that it's been set up for you. But once you have those exemptions on your property, you can contact us and we can assist you in getting those started for you. And this is another one of those options that we have available in order to assist our folks who are over the age of 65 or disabled veterans in order to make sure that they're staying in their home and able to make their payments with as much ease as possible. We do have quite a few options for payment. I know that the end of the year is coming a lot quicker than any of us really anticipate. So whenever those tax bills become due, as soon as you get that bill in the mail, you're able to make that payment. You can go online to our website in order to make that payment online. You can mail in a check. You can come into our office in any of our branch offices to pay in person, or if you'd prefer to pay to us by phone, we do have a phone number here that you can contact, and it'll be an automated system that takes your payment. None of our representatives are able to take payment over the phone. So just so you know, whenever you call the general number, they will not be able to take a payment from you. But you are able to make those partial or full payments on any of these methods aside from that telephone system. And just keep in mind that whenever you're making that payment with a credit card, it's a 2.45% fee. Cash and e-check payments are free at this moment, but for next year that might be changing, and I believe that they're going to start collecting a 50-cent fee for it. And cash is only allowed in person at the branch offices. So whenever you're making your payment, just, be wary and be aware of what is going to be required. That 2.45% fee for credit cards is applicable everywhere, all across the board, no matter which method you use to pay. If you're paying with a card, there is going to be that additional fee. So just keep that in mind. We are here to help. If you'd like to take a screen grab of the QR code that's here, if you'd like to take down our information to give us a call or to email us or to go onto our website, we're happy to help. We're always willing to get on the line and assist you with whatever it is that you're needing and get you the help that you need for your property taxes or answer any questions that you might have. I haven't checked on the chat since I hopped on, so I'm gonna look on here, but that is the end of my presentation. I'm very happy to have been here and be able to answer some questions, but please feel
Oh,
free to.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Feel free to ask any questions or put them in the chat. I'm gonna hand it over to Miss Nia, and she'll be able to kind of direct us from there.
I did have a quick question or something that if you could explain real quick.
Mhm.
What happens for those folks that, or if you could kind of explain a little bit more, if grandmother, grandfather, mother, father, whomever passes away that had that deferred exemption? What's the process for them if they now have inherited the property that had those, I mean, not deferred taxes, if they've had those deferred taxes for 5, 10 years, now there's 5, 10 years worth of taxes that are now due on that property that they just inherited. What happens?
So, so whenever property taxes are deferred, it is a postponement of taxes that is applicable for as long as that person lives in the property. After that person is no longer living in the property, and if they've passed away or if they've decided to move, those taxes in that situation are due. Now, they had been collecting that interest fee of 5% per year. So it's that interest fee is already included from the moment in which they pass away. However, once that deferral gets removed from the account, the taxpayer has 181 days. So the heir of the property would have 181 days to make that payment and to be able to enjoy that same interest amount due. Now, after those 181 days, the penalty and the interest for the account, as it would have been from the beginning, are going to be collected in full. So those whatever penalty and interest fees that had been deferred and postponed during their life gets removed, and we start collecting with penalty and interest as if that deferral had not been on there after those 181 days. So whatever is due at that point in time would be collected with penalty and interest.
Okay, so for those folks that have those seniors that are living on fixed income, please, even if you got to go online and check the tax bill yourself, check to see if those tax bills have been paid. Because sometimes you get those seniors that don't want folks in their business, that don't want to know, want their kids to know that they're having financial difficulties. They may have had a tax deferral and nobody knew. Nobody knows that mama ain't paid her taxes in the last 4 or 5 years or what have you. Now that means that all the kids or whomever is not going to be responsible for those taxes within 6 months of the passing if if that bill has not been paid. So have that conversation with your seniors and your senior relatives to find out, just to be on the safe side, you know,
And
bring it
it
up.
really is it really does have a lot of benefits to it. The deferral process is one that's intended to help.
Mhm.
But really the best way that you can help yourselves while helping yourself is to ensure that everyone who is going to inherit that property is aware of what comes after. So the best way to be able to help yourselves is to make sure that everyone stays informed and is aware of what's happening. If you have to start telling them now, hey, I'm on a deferral, the taxes are postponed, but this is how much is owed. You can start paying on it now. You don't have to wait until your loved one passes away in order to start doing that. But it is a conversation that, while difficult, is necessary. So it's one of those things that we do recommend. Um, you know, it does help a lot of folks when it comes to property taxes, and some folks just want to stay in their homes and enjoy their homes while they can. Um, but it is one of those situations in which, in order to help those who are inheriting that property, that you make sure that everyone is aware of what is going to happen afterwards. That way, you can still maintain that benefit of not having to worry about your property being foreclosed on because you're on a fixed income, but also not having to, put that additional strain on them later of not knowing and then having to go back and do it again.
And then too, we've even had some instances in the past too where we've had folks that have signed up for a deferral thinking that they're applying for an exemption and that they didn't know the difference. So sometimes people may, think, oh, I'm exempt from property taxes or I don't have to pay and I've already, taken care of that or whatever. when in actuality they may have gotten a deferral, not knowing that they, you know, didn't apply for that they've gotten taxes deferred versus the exemption. So just verify.
Yeah, just verify, but also keep in mind, the tax bill will state a value. So whenever you receive your tax bill at the end of the year, that tax bill is still going to say, even if you are deferred, it is going to have a little note in the section there where it would have your exemptions. It's going to say that your taxes are deferred. But in addition to that, it's still going to have the value of how much you're paying in your taxes. But if you see that your taxes owed, as in the amount that you owe for your property taxes, is zero, that's when you know that it's an exemption. So the exemptions are shown and calculated, and on your bill, it shows you what the calculations are with your exemptions. But if it's just deferred and you're over the age of 65 and you still see an amount on there, that amount is still due. So in order for you to kind of just help yourselves, if you are wondering or if you're unsure, please feel free to give us a call. But just for your own information, whenever you're looking at your bill, if that bill says a zero amount, your deferral will never cause your bill to be zero. Your exemptions will reduce your value to where you might not pay any taxes, but your deferral does not change the value of how much you would pay in taxes. The only thing it does is affects how much interest you would pay on it.
Okay. I'm going to go to the questions that were emailed to me first before I get to the questions that were in the chat. I don't have any that are in the comment section on our social media pages. But if there's some other questions that actually also pop up, you guys are still more than welcome to continue to type them in the chat or raise your hand and unmute yourself, and then we can get to those. Ms. Lisa, this will probably be more for you. What do you do when family refuses to vacate a house that has been willed to you and the probate has been completed?
You're going to need to evict them, and it's a little bit more complicated. This is more an eviction question than a probate question. What I would recommend is apply to Earl Carl and see if they can help you out, or Lone Star Legal Aid or Houston Volunteer Lawyers. If they do not accept you, call Houston Lawyer Referral Service and say you need a real estate attorney with experience in eviction.
We actually have our eviction presentation that's scheduled for Tuesday, the 19th. So for the person that answered that question, an attorney will be on Tuesday to review our eviction. And I didn't realize that more. I didn't think eviction when I asked that question, but there will be an attorney on Tuesday that can address that for you.
It is eviction. It's not as straightforward. For example, regular evictions, you don't have to be an attorney. In Texas in general, if it's JP court, which is also known as small claims court, you don't have to be an attorney. But in the situation where you've inherited a house and there's a family member that won't leave, you're going to have an attorney handle the eviction. Because the procedure is a little bit more complicated.
Okay. All right. Other question here. You went over affidavit. Can you explain affidavit of heirship one more time? Because there was that question that was in here about the grandchild inherited a property without a will. Is an affidavit of heirship needed, or do you need an attorney for it?
If the grandchild is the one and only heir, you could do an affidavit of heirship. How affidavit of heirship differs from the other processes is affidavit of heirship gives the property to every single living family member in that generation. So as an example, I had a case where the whole family had agreed that the three youngest siblings would inherit the house. I did an affidavit of heirship from the mother. The father had already passed. I did it from the mother to all the children, and then the children who weren't going to live in the house signed deeds giving their share to the children who had agreed. So if the grandchild is the only heir, you can absolutely do it. I'd recommend talking to an attorney about it because I don't know enough details about the situation.
Okay. All right. Making sure I got everything here. Again, just to remind everybody that I will be sending out a copy of the link of the presentation so that you can go back and watch the recording. The chat messages and responses will be available for you all to go back and view as well. Any references that were made, I did include those links in the chat, but I will also be including those on the email that I send out as well. And along with
Everybody,
the documents.
Yeah, please keep an eye out for the email because I don't think y'all realize what a great job Nia does. It's not just the recording, it's a link to every document that we've discussed during this. So it's really helpful.
Okay.
And please
I
share
did
it.
put the number for legal lines in here. Let me see. What if my dad added me and two other assets and forgot to add me to the 401k? Can you complete an affidavit of heirship for that?
Oh, thank you so much for bringing that up. I saw that in the chat and that's a great question. Affidavit of heirship is only for real property, only for a house, only for real estate. For financial accounts, there is a possibility that you can do a small estate affidavit. You do not want to do it without asking whoever administers that 401k if they will accept it, because there are some financial institutions that will only take an executor of an estate or a administrator of an estate. So if they'll let you do the small estate, that's the cheapest way to do it, but don't do that without confirming with them.
Can you explain what a quit claim deed is and if it's valid or not?
With
I would like to refer them to that fabulous presentation you had a few months ago. A quitclaim deed is not a good idea. At Texas Law Help, we have a lot of forms. One thing we absolutely do not and will never have is deeds because it is so easy to mess up a deed and then people don't own what they should be owning. Quitclaim deed does not transfer that much of the property interest, so please don't use it.
And neither does paying property taxes that are back that are owed for a property. I don't care how many workshops or how many lunches these people are promising you on social media, telling you to come in and let me, give you lunch and tell you how you can get these properties in Texas.
That
That
is
does
not
not
how
work.
that works.
That is not how that works. Shay, will you please give an explanation of that?
So for as long as I can remember, people believe that whenever you pay the property taxes on a property that is delinquent, that paying those property taxes makes you the owner of that property. Whether it's your grandmother's property who's passed away and you've been paying the property taxes like right on time every year, no issues. A lot of folks get the impression that because you're paying the property taxes that that property belongs to you or that you have some kind of a claim on that property. That is not the case. When you're paying property taxes, all tax payments are voluntary payments. It is not an assignation of ownership. It does not help you in supporting a claim of ownership. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. Property taxes are property taxes on their own. They're owed to the property by the owners. That is true. But if you pay for property taxes that are not yours, then there truly is not much of a difference between just paying property taxes on behalf of somebody else. You're going to possibly directly influence their having trouble to pay their property taxes later on, because if someone else tries to pay their property taxes that they should be, it might cause some strife for them, but it's truly not going to make any difference as far as ownership or who that owner of the property is. So,
I want to add something to that. I'm so glad that you asked Shay about this because this is an ongoing issue. Um, I have had clients that thought if they put their name on the property tax account for the house, that meant they own the house. As she is shaking her head, that is absolutely not true. Property taxes have nothing to do with whether you own that property or not. Um, the same goes for homeownership. HOA dues. I had a client once who her father had passed, so she started paying his HOA dues. Because she did not legally own that house, the HOA said, "Thank you very much. That's a gift." She didn't get the money back. She was out that money. So
oh, fantastic.
yeah, it was a
I'm sure she
yeah.
was very, very ecstatic about that.
She was thrilled. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't let I'm sure there are people all over town with their luncheons and their free seminars telling you can do that. Do not ever think that. Paying property taxes, paying HOA dues doesn't mean you own the house.
Yeah. And also I want to kind of warn people also about these deed scams, the clear and title scams, the forgeries and fraud that has taken place. It has happened for far too often and far too many times, and people don't realize that they are losing their property because people are taking property from them and filing false claims and deeds and things with the clerk's office. It just so happened that we had a presentation a few months ago with an attorney that deals with fraudulent scam or title scams and things of that nature, and that said that someone went to pay their property taxes, and the property tax office told them that their bill had been paid, and they were like, "Wait a minute, we didn't pay our taxes yet. Our bill is due." They looked to find out that somebody else had paid it in a forged sale that had gone through, and another claim and a deed had been filed saying that the ownership had been switched and transferred. Luckily, they caught it in time because they contacted the title company that paid the tax bill, and the title company was able to stop it, and it stopped the process and track where they wired money to and things of that nature to catch that person. However, many times that does not get caught. So please make sure that you pay attention to those tax bills, that you kind of look at your deed, at least, look up your property records and look at your deed at least once a year to make sure that there isn't any kind of fraudulent claims or anything like that that have been filed against your property, and that your property is actually still in your name. Because unfortunately, it is happening a whole lot easier and a lot more frequently than people realize. So do keep that in mind.
It's one of those negative effects of making everything so convenient. You can do everything online these days almost, and because it's easy to do, it just makes it more accessible to everyone, those who are intending to do good and those who are intending to do bad. But it
Yeah.
is one of those things where even if you just have to dedicate like a couple of days towards the end of the year where you're just like, all right, I'm going to pay my taxes, I'm going to check on my deed, I'm going to go and make sure that my exemptions are still in place and just roll on, you know? But
Yeah.
it is one of those things, just dedicate a day to it. Just we're right next door to each other in a lot of our branch offices because downtown has one, Scarsdale has one. I believe there's over one in Bel Air area that they are also like directly next to the county clerk's office, like next door neighbors. And if you want to just go and get a really quick records check, you're more than welcome to do that. But,
Mhm.
just make sure that you're dedicating a good bit of time to ensuring that your property is in good standing for not just taxes, but
Indeed.
everything.
Indeed. If an owner's home is in a living trust, is a property still available for the over 65 exemption if the owners are eligible?
I'll start there, and Shay probably has something to add. I am coming across people more and more that get trusts on the internet because they hear all these talk shows about how great a trust is. And so they go online and they can get a trust for a couple $100, which if you get a trust at a law firm, it's going to be
Wait,
Thousands.
many thousands. Yeah. Um, if you get a trust that's online, it is worth nothing. You just threw away those few $100 because it you can still get your over 65 exemption if you transfer the property to a living trust, but it is complicated. The deed and the trust have to be worded very specifically. I used to work at attorneys' offices where part of what we did was transfer property to trust. The deeding the house from yourself to your trust has to have very specific magic language that will explain that you could still be eligible for those exemptions.
and
Otherwise, you won't get them.
and we get those questions quite a bit here at HCAT, and you can contact us. There are some specific things that you have to do, but you can do it.
It
But
can
Yeah.
be done, but
But
it
be
needs to be
careful.
done specifically.
Yeah.
I literally just on Tuesday had a lady that called our office right before our no, last Thursday, right before our estate planning presentation, that said that she has a friend who went online and got the forms. So she used her form to do her trust. So she wanted to make sure that she's still going to get her exemptions.
Oh, let's see.
I think you passed me whatever you had, Miss
Oh
Lisa.
no,
I've
don't.
given this
Okay.
to everybody. I
You
started
can
it.
keep it to yourselves, ladies.
Excuse
Thank
me.
you.
I
But yeah,
apologize. I started the copying.
but I'm like, yeah, you one, you got to make sure that it's not a revocable trust that you file.
Hmm.
Because can you explain what revocable trust is? Irrevocable.
This is a very basic explanation. It's a lot more complicated than this, but basically, revocable means you can change it. Irrevocable means you cannot. So, revocable trust It's probably the most common. Like you'll hear about a living trust. That's where and if you transfer your property to this trust, but you still maintain control over the trust, so you can change it. Irrevocable trust means once it's put in that trust, it is set in stone. There is one good reason. There's probably more than one, but a good reason to have an irrevocable trust is if you need to qualify for Medicaid benefits. So there are people that will go to an elder law attorney while they're still in good health, transfer their property to an irrevocable trust. That way they can legally get on Medicaid. But if you transfer your house to an irrevocable trust and down the line you think, I really want to downsize, my kids are all gone, I need something smaller, I'm tired of this, it will be very difficult to sell it. Even a revocable, you still have to transfer it from the trust back to yourself. So in general, I'm sure I know that there are probably hundreds of attorneys in Houston that will take you out to dinner and give you this seminar on how trusts are the latest and greatest things. It's not that straightforward. And I've probably now made every elder law attorney in Houston not like me. I apologize.
They'll get over it.
Apologize
They'll
for
be okay.
absolutely nothing.
They will be quite all right. Let's see.
It needs to be said.
Indeed. Yes,
You're
indeed.
absolutely right. Thank you.
Whatever's going to save everybody the most amount of money and the least amount of time and the least amount of headache, we're all for it.
That's what I am. I know
We're
there
trying
are
to
plenty of
minimize.
reasons for doing that. I'm here to simplify it and make it the easiest way for you and your family down the line.
Yeah, because believe it or not, the probate process itself is not complicated. It's waiting
No.
for that court date.
Like-
Harris County just
like-
added a 5th probate court. It's still not enough.
Yeah.
And
So like
it's
you
just
said,
such a backlog.
the whole
Harris County's
process
just-
itself, you're literally in court all of 5 minutes just to say, hey, you presented these documents. Is this accurate? This true? Yep. Okay. Boom. There you go. You're done. And that's it. You get your letters.
Yeah.
So
The
it's not
process
easy.
isn't long or difficult. It's just tedious because
Yes.
it takes so long to get to the
Oh.
point in which you can do something about it.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. But that's not a reason to be afraid of it at all.
And I was at an event for United Way this morning, and there was all these different resource and organizations and things out there. There are so many different grief services and grief counseling for kids, for parents that have lost their children, for children that have lost their parents, and older people, younger people, disabled, everything. There's all kinds of services that are out there. There's a few of those resources that I'm going to also include on there when I send out the email, because the people sometimes, they really don't realize, as you were mentioning, all the work that's involved with this, but it is mentally taxing.
Yes.
I have to deal with this kind of a process, and you're not prepared as much as you may think that you are prepared for it. But when you're in the middle of that, it is a very mentally taxing thing to have to deal with, trying to grieve, trying to handle someone's financial affairs, making sure things don't get lost and in foreclosure and in taxes and insurances, and just making sure people aren't taking things from the house and stealing out of bank accounts. And it's a lot. Or even just having to remove people's property. What do you do with their clothes, their furniture, their stuff? It's mentally draining to have to deal with that stuff. And you don't want to have to you just don't it's some stuff that you really just don't want to deal with if you don't have to. So the biggest gift that you guys can give to your family members is to try to take care of as much of this stuff as you possibly can, well enough in advance, so at least that's one less thing that they really have to worry about in the event of somebody's passing, because you don't really want to have to deal with that. Clarification question for you, Miss Lisa. To be clear, I did not inherit the land as a grandchild. I'm currently educating my family on why we need to file an affidavit of heirship. The land was inherited by 12 kids. My mother is one of 12. Is there legally anything that can help, or are hands tied?
Let them watch this video or any of the other videos we have about clearing title. I appreciate what you're doing, and I'm really glad that you're explaining that to your family. An affidavit of heirship is the best thing that they can do in order to make sure that the property stays within the current generation of living heirs.
And that's assuming she's one of 12 that are still alive, because if one
Yes,
has passed and then they have children, now you have to deal with their children or their children's children and so
The
on and
heirs
so
of
forth.
heirs
The heirs of
from
heirs.
yeah,
Yes.
and the other thing I would say, Mr. Ricky, is to call the Earl of Carl Institute. They are fabulous. They are a great help if the property is located in Harris or an adjoining county. Um, Otherwise, send them to this presentation.
But they
Legally,
all have to agree.
yeah, they all have to agree. Legally, you want to be careful because you don't want to cross the line into practicing law without a license, but you're doing a great job.
Okay, there was a question in the chat. If you want to unmute yourself, you can. Just don't give your name or your information. Because I'm not going to say who you are, since you wanted to try to protect your privacy.
I'm going to respond to her.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
Hi. Thank you for your question.
Yes. Do you want to go ahead and finish what you were gonna say?
I personally do not represent clients. We're basically a statewide clearinghouse to help people with legal information and advice. You are welcome to come to texaslawhelp.org Monday through Thursday, 10 to 2, and you can speak to an attorney. We can only give legal advice to people who are very low. It's 125% of the federal poverty limit, but we can give legal information to anybody who lives in Texas. So you're very welcome to do that. You're welcome to email me. I'm just limited in the information I can give you, but I can give you general assistance. So I am copied on the email that Nia sends out. My name is Lisa Nelson, and I'll put my email one more time in the chat in response to your question.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to ask. I mean, if you want to try to ask a general question, you can try it.
You've got me now too.
Okay, I'm gonna try to ask it generally. The property that I inherited, well, I'm thinking I inherited, was actually my mom's. My mom actually inherited it from her mother, and but the property is still in her mother's, I mean, in her name, it's in her name,
Your mother's
or in her
name?
mother's. Yes, ma'am, but I think from the documents that we found, I mean, it was legally like she inherited it, but when she passed, it was nowhere where she doesn't have a will. My mom didn't have a will, and
Nothing's been recorded.
nothing other than her mother passing it to her. So
you need to have an attorney take a look at this, because affidavits of heirship are great if it's a generation that just passed away and it'd be the first generation to inherit it. It's straightforward. But when you've got multiple generations, you need to talk to a real estate attorney to have them check to make sure that the chain of title is clear, because this gets more complicated.
yeah, she actually, we found the documentation where my grandmother granted her the property, but when my mom passed away, we didn't know anything. This is new for us. It's like, do we file an heirship of affidavit, because we still pay the taxes on the property, and it's kind of scary to know that if if she's if she didn't leave anything legally written to us, then, and we're still paying property taxes, we're paying it, so just to
you need to make
responsible.
sure that your grandmother's interest was also transferred directly to your mother, because just finding that paperwork doesn't mean that it's gone through the legal process
Yeah.
that needed to transfer it to your mother. So start with the Earl Carl Institute. Their information will be on the
I've
follow-up
tried
email.
to look at that website is not working.
I'm not there anymore, but I know that all their information will be in the follow-up email. And
For Earl Carl?
yeah,
Yeah, it's still working.
Because I went on there, maybe I went on the wrong thing. I don't know. But I remember going on there and wasn't really seeing much information or who to contact, but I'll go back on there.
yeah,
Maybe it
you
was through
just need to
like
put in an
Midwest or
application
something.
with them, because you really need to have an attorney look through and make sure that going back, that property had been handled. Because just because there's wills, just because there's, whatever kind of paperwork, it doesn't mean that that's gone through the legal process. So,
Okay.
We
just
found
start
the
with the Earl Carl, and if not there, call Houston Lawyer Referral Service, and
mhm.
they can give you, they actually have people that are willing, they have attorneys that are willing to charge a lower rate than what normally would be charged.
Okay, because we found my grandmother's will and we saw where she willed the property over to my mom.
But you don't know if that will was probated. Just because it's in a will doesn't, the will has to go through the probate court process. If it's
Yeah, it
just a
has a
will out there,
judge's name and all of that
you
signed.
still will need to
It's
have an
in,
attorney check it.
Yeah, and even
okay.
if it was probated, the process still needs to be done to actually transfer the property. So that's another step that a lot of people miss after probate, that even though, okay, the judge has decided this will is valid, everything is good to go, beneficiaries can now take possession of what they have, somebody now has to go to that next step to actually transfer the property. So if that part still wasn't done, then it still hasn't been done. It's not automatic just because you went through
No,
probate.
I get um I will get calls all the time where someone thinks just because something was left in a will and the will was probated, that doesn't mean that someone has done the follow through. What if there's a will and the will says I leave my property to my daughter? The attorney and the executor of the will still has to prepare a deed transferring the property from the estate to that
Mhm.
daughter. So you need to have somebody who can go through the property records to make sure that everything has happened that needs to happen.
So you saying that where do I need to start by looking for somebody that can help me with the first steps
Start with
to take?
either Earl Carl, and I don't know, they don't, sometimes they get full and can't take cases. Start with Earl Carl, and
I
then
put
also
their
go
link
to,
in the chat. I put the link to their
yeah,
office in the chat.
Houston Lawyer Referral
Okay.
Service.
That's
And
in the
that's for
chat
a
as
real
well.
estate attorney.
That's in the chat as well.
Okay. Um, I'll have to probably try to copy this
You
somehow.
can click the link and it'll take you to their website.
Okay.
But these links will also be included in the email that I send out as well.
Yeah, please,
Okay,
everybody,
that'll
don't
help me.
don't disregard the email because it has so much valuable information.
Okay, and we'll receive the email right after.
Yeah, after the recording gets done downloading and things, then I'll send the recording with all the reference information, a copy of the affidavit of heirship, a copy of a transfer on death deed with instructions of how all this stuff actually works.
It'll be within a
I
day or
really
two. I mean, she's
Yeah,
very
it'll be
quick
within
at
the
getting it.
next day. Yeah.
thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
and Mr. Ricky asked a great question in the chat. He asked if affidavits are valid after 4 years, and the answer is absolutely yes. Great question. Affidavits of heirship are recorded in the real property records, and they are valid till there is a subsequent transfer of the property.
Okay. I believe those are all of the questions. If I missed anything, please, you guys unmute yourself and ask, but I think I kind of went through the chat just to be on the safe side and make sure. I also went through the emails. Okay. Look behind. Uh, volunteer attending to get more information. Transfer on death deed. Okay. All right. So that's that.
I just
You
wanted to
all
say
are very
something.
welcome. Yes, ma'am.
This is really it's eye-opening when you never think that it would happen to you until it happens. It's like, oh my God, what do we do? Because it's really real out here in these streets where people are, and just to hear you guys say that people are doing false transfer of titles, I didn't really understand how crucial, I mean, like how people are really, really doing that. I mean, you see the commercials and stuff, and where people are talking about how their houses were taken, but until you have a loved one that died without taking the responsibility of making the will and putting things in proper place, and then now you're like, wow, this is me, and this could be me, and all of what we own could be snatched up from under us, and you have no knowledge of what to do. This, I really, really, really appreciate this um this presentation that y'all are offering. I came across this by just by chance or whatever. I really believe it's the Lord, but I know nothing about nothing, nothing about what to do. And this is very informative for me and my family because this is what we depend on right now. Like, and for just to know that it could possibly be fraudulently taken is
Mm,
scary. It's
Please
very
share
mhm.
this from everybody here. Please share this information. You know, we always end this with pay it forward. Forward this email, you know, let people know, you know, about all of our programs that we have because we're here for the community.
Indeed. And you're not the only one that doesn't know. So sometimes it's not that, people just didn't do it because they just didn't do it. It's because they don't know. A lot of times people assume you get a lot of older people, oh,
Mhm.
well, so and so is going to get the property after I'm gone anyway, not knowing there's a process, there's
Yeah.
stuff that needs to be done afterwards. So they don't necessarily do it out of just because, sometimes they really just don't know.
So
And
many people don't know.
we've been doing these presentations and doing this stuff since like 2018, 2019, 17,
Maybe
somewhere
further
around in
back.
there. And we do this every single month and have been doing it for the last 6, 7 years because people still don't know. There's so many people out there, even as many times as we've done it, as many other people that are out there giving these kinds of presentations, there are still so many people that just don't know, just
And you
don't know.
don't know what you don't know. But
And you
it's really,
don't know what you
and
don't know.
we are starting to get back out in the community again. And I was at one of the great community centers here in Houston. And I got in an argument with someone who told me, well, they left it to me in the will. That's it. It was willed to me. And no, you have to go through all that legal process.
And a lot of the information that we share is to try to, like we said, to try to save you as much money as possible. Whatever attorneys don't
Mhm.
really like it or what have you, you know, what have you. But the first part of the presentation that we do on the first Thursday, and I'll include that recording as well for you guys to go back and see. It is wills and estate planning. Why do you need it? Because so many people still have those questions. Oh, my husband's going to get the property. Why do I need to get a will? Or we're married and we bought the property together. Why do I need a will? Or my kids are going to get the property or get my bank accounts or whatever. Or I don't have
Oh,
anything. Why do I need a will? Watch that presentation because we actually go through those steps of what it is that makes up an estate plan. Because a lot of times people hear estate plan and they think estate, they think
Big,
multi-millions of dollars, they think,
luxurious.
yeah.
but it's what you own, it's what you have, it's access to those bank accounts, it's what happens to your children, where's the guardianship, who has the power of attorney. I tell people if COVID didn't teach anybody anything, it's the fact that anything can happen at any time, regardless of your age, regardless of your race, regardless of your creed, regardless of your nationality, regardless of anything. Things can happen at any time and something needs to be put in place. It should just trigger you to start thinking about, mm, I'm single parent. What happens to my children? Who's
The
going to
big
watch over
picture.
them? Who's going to get access to my bank accounts to pay my mortgage so that so that my family will have somewhere to live? Who does that type of thing for you? Who's going to make decisions about my body if I become incapacitated or get into a car accident tomorrow? Who makes those decisions for you? Who handles your bills, your affairs? You know, it's that kind of stuff. Folks just don't like talking about it
No,
you know, for some reason. They just don't like having the conversations. So it's a matter of just trying to get people to kind of change that mindset. I need to do something, put something in place. At least we've had so many people that have attended we've done periodic transfer on deaf deed clinics. And we're trying to secure financings for us to continue to do more throughout the year. But at those clinics, we have had so many people to say, thank you so much for giving me peace of mind. Forget the family, but at least me, I got my peace of mind knowing that I did what I'm supposed to, and that my kids are not going to have to worry about doing this when something happens to me. It's not if, when something happens to me, at least I know the house that I've worked for all these years is going to get passed on. At least they know the savings that I've got, my insurance, my whatever is going to go to who it is that I intend for it to go to, as opposed to it being up there in the cloud somewhere. Because technically, that's what's going to happen. You know, you got an iPhone. You know, there's a lot of iPhone people on here because I see you in the participant list. The iPhone users, your stuff is just kind of up there in the cloud. That's the same thing that happens with your property and your assets. It's just kind of in the cloud somewhere until somebody does something with it, because it just doesn't happen automatically. So we're hoping that these presentations to get the conversation started, at least to, you know, have you sit around Sunday dinner, you know, you sitting there with Big Mama and them, the, you know, the barbecue coming up. Hey, Uncle Pete, did you hear about so and so blah blah died the other day, and didn't, you know, the kids are up in arms, and now y'all can open up the door to have a conversation. You know what I mean? At least
and
somebody can
please
start talking about it.
don't
Please.
ever think, I can't tell you how many times my kids all get along. We're not going to have a problem. If you don't know how people are going to grieve, you don't know how people are going to do with their, dealing with their loss. You want to have everything done absolutely set in stone with your transfer and death deed, with your will, because you don't know how your kids are going to fight. And, I hate to say that, but it's true. I mean, I can tell you where people will fight over absolutely nothing.
Shoes and earrings, because we've had those too. We've heard those stories too. They fight over shoes, earrings, and the sheets that the parents died on. They're still
Yeah,
fighting
my
over it.
favorite story, I think, is that somebody who fought in court because they wanted the sheets that their parents died
The
in.
parents that died. Yeah. And I do apologize. We are 30 minutes over, and I'm surprised that these 30 people are still hanging in there and watching us. I appreciate that, but we do want to be mindful of you guys' time. There was one last question that was in the chat. It says do you have to do probate before filing an heirship affidavit?
No, if you're filing an affidavit of heirship, you do not have to go through probate.
Okay.
Affidavit of heirship avoids probate. It is, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but no, if you're just trying to transfer a house, you don't have to go through probate. You can do an affidavit of heirship.
So there's potentially ways that somebody could avoid probate by doing affidavit of heirship and payable on death, or transfer on death deed.
You don't, the affidavit of heirship is kind of a, your
Last
last
minute.
chance. Please, please, please do a transfer on death deed, because the affidavit of heirship is more complicated. With the transfer on death deed, you can state absolutely who should inherit your house.
And did you talk about transfer on death deed really quick, just to tell
I did.
people know what
Transfer
is?
on
Okay.
death deed is the deed that you state who you want to inherit your house after you pass. You own that house 100% until you pass away.
Okay. Ms. Cheryl, thank you for your testimonial. She says the estate planning presentation was a true eye opener, very easy to understand and to execute.
Yeah, don't just take my word. Please go to our other presentations, because everybody who's part of Amos is absolutely fabulous. It's an honor to be part of it.
All right. So again, if there's more information that you guys need or need a little bit more clarity, please feel free to come back to our presentation next month. This particular one is the second Thursday of each month. The wills and estate planning session, that's kind of divided into two. The first part is the why do you need it? And then the second part is how to draft your own will and transfer on death deed. So she kind of goes over those documents, but she goes into a little bit more detail about how to draft or how to create your own will, and then what it takes to actually draft or to fill out that form for a transfer on death deed. So she explains all of that in those two particular sessions. But there's a variety of different workshops that we do offer each month. And I'm going to send out that calendar along with, again, the recording, the links for all the different resources, the various websites, any forms that were discussed here today, those will also be included. Transfer of motor vehicle will also be included in that, along with a copy of the transfer on deck deed for you guys as well, and the affidavit of heirship. Wholeheartedly appreciate you all, my videographer and graphic designer in North Texas. There's anything I can do, you can. I'm gonna call you Mr. Williams because yeah, we need
Be careful what you offer to do for us.
hey,
Honestly.
look, we are a nonprofit organization, so we take our help wherever we can get it at any time. And videography and graphic services is something that we definitely need because we're all hands on. This Zoom stuff here, yeah, we're learning this as we go too. So, don't think
We're not doing too bad. Just
we're not doing
don't
too bad. We're not doing too bad at all. But thank y'all very much for joining. Thank y'all for sticking around. We appreciate you. For being here. We do hope that you all got the information that you needed to receive here today. There will be a quick link that pops up on your screen asking about a survey, asking how we did, the information that was covered. If there is any information that you guys would like to share with us as far as how this information helped you, please share that with us. If it was, beneficial to you, please let us know that. If there are any presentations that we don't currently offer, if there's something that's pertinent that's going on in your neighborhood or your community that's impacting you guys and you want more information about, let us know that as well, because we're trying to schedule out the remaining of our sessions for fall. And we want to know, based on your feedback, what you give us is what we provide to you guys. So do we need to re-register? Yes, you will need to register for each presentation that you do. For the wills and estate planning, I'm going to send you the link for that, so you don't, because that one's already recorded. So I'm going to send you the link for that. You can just go back and watch it, or you can also go to our YouTube channel and see the various workshops that we've had in the past as well. But that link for our YouTube channel, follow us, just subscribe to our channel, all that kinds of stuff. You'll get the notification when we upload new videos there as well. So thank y'all very much. Y'all all have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves and stay safe. And we hope to see y'all again soon. Thank you so much, Shay. Miss Mabel is gone already, I believe. Miss Lisa, thank y'all so much for volunteering your time to be here this afternoon to provide this information to the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
happy to do it, Miss
everybody.
Nia. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
All
Thank you,
right. Y'all
everyone.
have a
Goodbye.
wonderful day. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That was great.
It was. Let me stop the recording here.